was a book that came out about, I think, 3 years ago. And some liberal wannabe geniuses got together and decided that they had a way to get this book off the New York Times list and to get the book pulled off the shelves in America. Believe it or not, pulled a New York Times bestseller, pulled from the shelves. Why? Because these liberal professors got together and scared the publisher and said, this isn't even true. And they scared enough people to where it was pulled off the shelves. I happen to know the author, and I happen to know the research the author does. And I called the author while this was going on, and I said, what the hell is happening? And he explained it to me. And I said, but I know you well enough to know, and I know you have the actual documents to prove this and back this up. He said, yes. I said, you know what you should do? You should take all of their concerns, all of the things they said, and you should add them to this book. And you should use the original documents that shut them down and then republish. That's exactly what this author has done, and it is even stronger than it was before. And the reason why they wanted it pulled in the first place is not because the facts aren't right, is because this gentleman that he is talking about in this book is revolutionary. This book is about, if you don't take this guy down, you can't destroy America. The book is about Thomas Jefferson, and the book is called The Jefferson Lies. Everything that the left has said about Thomas Jefferson that is an out-and-out distortion and lie, backed up with the facts. The author is David Barton, and he is with us now. Hi, David.
Hey, Glenn.
I can't tell you how happy I am that you've published this and put this out. Do you want to get into it all, what happened before, and what?
I'll go where you want to, but I want to pile on what you said, because people have to get rid of Jefferson on the left if this is going to work. And they've done such a good job that we've been hearing recently the calls for the Jefferson to be taken off Mount Rushmore, for him to be taken off the nickel, for him to tear down the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., the Democrats are saying no more Jefferson-Jackson Day dinners. Jefferson's got nothing to do with who we are.
Andrew Jackson does.
Andrew Jackson, that's a good guy to get rid of.
He's a good guy.
That's a good guy to get rid of.
Yeah, I would be for getting rid of Jackson.
Absolutely.
They'll stand around and love Jackson, who was a horrible guy.
Yep.
But you got to torch Jefferson.
You got to torch Jefferson. And man, his ideas are so opposite to where they are today and where most folks in government are.
When I was growing up, it was the Jefferson dinner, the Jefferson-Jackson dinner for the Democrats, and the Lincoln dinner. And they have now, we still embrace Lincoln, but they are divorcing themselves from Jefferson. Let's go through some of the policies that you say are exactly the opposite based on facts.
Well, I went through and listed 15 specific things Democrats are doing right now that Jefferson would go through the roof over, not the least of which Jefferson had very clear opinions on health care and who should and shouldn't do health care, and the federal government was not to do it. It was to be in the states. He has very clear issues on LGBT.
Give me some examples on that, David.
Let me read you a quote from Jefferson.
Because you don't think of health care as being something that they even debated back then. But they debated abortion back then.
That's right. All of these issues, nothing new. Jefferson says, here's what he said, between the role of federal and state governments on health care. He says the federal government is to certify with exact truth for every vessel sailing from a foreign port the state of health which prevails at the place from which she sails. So if you're coming from overseas, you got to be healthy to come to America. But the state authorities are charged with the care of the public health. So health goes to the state level. It's not a federal thing. It's not one of the 15 enumerated powers that goes to the states. So there's a role for the feds, but only with the borders. Once it's inside the borders, everything inside the borders for health care belongs to the states. Okay. Exactly opposite.
Give me the next.
All right, let's take some debt. How about debt? That's a real easy one. It's so many things here to deal with, but let me take debt. Or even federal growth. Listen to this, federal growth. I think we have more machinery of government than is necessary. There are too many parasites living on the labor of the industrious. The multiplication of government offices, the increase of expense beyond income, the growth of the public debt, these are all indications that we need a pruning knife in government, small government.
You say that he also is dead set against what the Democrats are doing with the LGBT.
Right. LGBT, he came out very clearly and he said the law of nature, Creator, Bible, and by the way, he actually introduced a bill that said that laws should be those that are recognized by the Bible. Marriage should be based on biblical recognition. So he said marriage has got to be defined by what the Bible defines it as. That's a law that he introduced. He also said that sexual relations were designed for procreation, not for entertainment. And therefore, in that basis, that's how you define marriage, as procreation. So sexual relations were designed by the Creator throughout a law of nature for procreation. Anything that violates that violates the laws of nature. And he came up also on the issue of marriage, and he said, taking from the states the moral rule of their citizens and subordinating it to the federal government would break up the foundations of the Union. You leave it at the states, not the feds.
Let's go to gun control.
Gun control. I'm just going to take, because he's got that going tonight in the State of the Union. So let me just take the gun control. Here's what he told youth, young people. See if we get this from a Democrat. A strong body makes a strong mind. As to the best species of exercise, I advise the gun. It gives boldness, enterprise, and independence to the mind. Let your gun, therefore, be the constant companion of your walks.
Holy cow.
That's for young people.
I think Barack Obama said that, 3 times last week?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now this is not necessarily what the book is about. The book is about the lies. And let's start with chapter number 1 is about Sally Hemings.
Right.
And that is the thing.
That's the agonizing
The
one.
number one thing people use to discredit, well, he had children with a slave.
Yeah.
Back in November of 1998, that came out in the middle of the Clinton impeachments.
Yep.
And I was talking to a group of law students the other day at law school. I said, how many of you have heard that Sally Hemings, that Jefferson fathered children of Sally Hemings? 98% of them raised their hands. And I thought that's interesting because here we are now, 20-some-odd years later, still saying this thing. Why would we say it now? Why does it matter except to trash Jefferson? Here's the problem with that. 221 news outlets ran with that story when it came. 6 weeks later, the story was retracted. Only 11 news outlets carried the retraction. Now, why would they retract the story? We actually called and talked to the DNA researcher who did it, Dr. Eugene Foster, talked to him twice, and he says, actually, that's not what I showed him in my research. That's not my research said, but the guy who did it, Joseph Ellis, was a defender of Clinton, had just helped run a full-page ad in the New York Times defending Clinton from impeachment, and said this would really help him, because if we can say Jefferson had a sexual tryst, then we can say what's the big deal with Clinton. So he comes out and he says something. You know, you would think that if you want to check DNA, you would want to check Jefferson's DNA. They never checked Thomas Jefferson's DNA. They checked his uncle's DNA, Phil Jefferson. There were 26 Jefferson males living at the time. They never checked Thomas Jefferson's, and that's why the researchers said, I told them it wasn't Thomas Jefferson's. And what they
told them that it wasn't for sure Thomas Jefferson's, right?
It's
one in like...
One of 26.
One of 26. What they can do, to test DNA generations later, you have to test the Y chromosome, which remains the same in male descendants. So you have to have a male descendant. Thomas Jefferson had a son who died when he was 1. He has no male descendants. There's no way of testing his DNA. They say, well, the Jefferson family, all the Jeffersons in the United States, maybe. And so they take an uncle of Jefferson, Field Jefferson is his name. They tested him, and it was all based on the first child of Sally Hemings. 200 years ago, I've actually got the newspaper over there. 200 years ago, a guy named James T. Callender wrote an article that said Jefferson fathered Tom through Sally Hemings, and she called him Tom because it's fathered by Thomas Jefferson. And so for 200 years, that's what everybody said, Tom. Well, they tested the descendants of Thomas Woodson, and there is no Jefferson genes at all. Not any at all. Not Thomas's, not Field's, not any of the other 26, none. 200 years ago.
Wait. So the guy that they said was his son.
And they've said it for 200 years.
Okay, so the reason why they checked the DNA
is because of this guy.
And
Thomas.
They've checked his DNA,
and
his descendants, and there's zero.
Zero Jefferson. So number one, that nails the 200-year-old story.
So he's not even one of 26.
Oh, so where do we get the one of 26?
Well, Sally had 5 children, and the 4th child shows to have some Jefferson genes. So it could be one of the 26. Now, historically, they've always said it was Thomas Jefferson's brother Randolph because he lived there at Monticello.
Right.
He had, and that's what everybody still says, is there was none in what was believed to be Thomas's, but Randolph was believed to have an affair with Sally Hemings, and there is some Jefferson DNA in that 4th child, the Eston Hemings. So there's absolutely nothing that points to Jefferson. And by the way, after this was done and all this scandal broke and they recalled it, nobody talked about the recall, they pulled the story. They got a whole bunch of researchers together, all these PhD guys from Harvard and Kentucky University and Indiana, and they were guys that got together and said, we think Jefferson did it. And they looked at all the historical research and unanimously came back and said, we don't think Jefferson did it. Once you look at all the history, Jefferson didn't do it. That didn't make the news either. So it really has not helped a political agenda to exonerate Jefferson from 200-year-old charge that's been out there. But that's what the evidence is. That's a lie about Jefferson.
What was the case when the book was pulled that they said, well, you didn't address this, you didn't, what is it, how did you strengthen this case even more, David?
Well, what we did, it's interesting that when this thing was done, Thomas Nelson had the book and they never even talked to me about it. They just pulled the book and notified, they never even told me they pulled it. I told them ahead of time, here are the professors that are going to come after you, because these guys are on the left, they've been doing this for a while. Here's 2 cases of research documents to show you everything that I say is documented historically, and when they come after you, you'll know it. Well, they never did anything. Came after them, they pulled the book. So in this particular book, we never had to do anything to that particular lie because the academics didn't even touch it. They left it alone. They went after all the other things we said. So the 7 lies we pulled out, even the academics were scared to touch that one because it's too well documented. They would much rather have people think that Jefferson is morally impugned than to have him exonerated. So they never even went after that lie.
So let's take separation of church and state, because this is so well documented.
Yeah.
So well documented. And we always go to well, that isn't even in it. Name the document.
Yeah.
But beyond that, in his letters and the things that you outline in the book, it is crystal clear. Crystal clear. It's not what he meant the way they're using it today.
Well, see, they use it today as saying Jefferson is a secularist. A lot of writers say he's an atheist. And so they derive that because he wanted separation of church and state. Well, let's define it the way he did, and then let's also look at his actions. And so when you look at the way he defined it, he did not want a state-established government church that was telling you what denomination to belong to. And that's what he made really clear. This is a denominational issue. We don't want what we had in England, because in his state of Virginia, the Anglican Church was the state-established church, and they literally persecuted the Baptists and the Presbyterians and Methodists, threw them in jail, killed them, fined them, whatever. He didn't like that. Was he a secularist? No, not by a long shot. The thing I love to point to is that when he helps build the U.S. Capitol, as Secretary of State under under George Washington. 1795 is their building. They start having church services on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol every Sunday. Then when he becomes vice president under John Adams, as vice president, they vote and say, we want the largest building in the Capitol, brand new building, to be a church building. So Jefferson not only helps enact that, he starts going to church there every Sunday. And as president for 8 years, he goes to church there every Sunday. And I love the quote. Let me just read you a quote, because somebody said, why do you go to the church at the Capitol? Why is it that you're so faithful there? And even his political opponents that were in the other party talked about how that he never missed a church service at the Capitol. Even if it was raining, sleeting, snowing, whatever, he jumped on his horse and still made it there. And so, and asking him, why is it you do this? Here's his response. This is what he told the guy. They were walking to the Capitol Church together. He says, no nation has ever yet existed or been governed without religion, nor can it be. The Christian religion is the best religion that has been given to man, and I, as chief magistrate of this nation, am bound to give it the sanction of my example. There's no way I'm going to miss church. I've got an example to show to the nation, and I'm going to make sure we have church here at the Capitol. He starts church in the War Department and the Treasury Department every Sunday. So if you want to go to church in D.C., you can take the Capitol building or the War Department or the Treasury Department.
Jeez.
While he's President of the United States, he sets aside on 3 occasions property so that it can be used to propagate the gospel among Indians, federal property. He approves, I've got it over here in the folder, the actual treaty with the Kaskaskia Indians, where he sends money so that they can have priests, and he builds them a church in which they can worship. He directs the Secretary of War to give federal money to a religious school in Tennessee. he told a Christian school in Louisiana that it would enjoy the patronage of the government. And just go through all the list of stuff he did.
David has, at 5 o'clock today on the TV show, David's going to join me, and he has all of the documents.
I've got the documents.
So he will show you, and it's always great to watch David when he's got the documents. It's like, how do you argue? And he'll just take out the documents tonight, and he'll show them all to you, and you don't want to miss it. That's tonight, 5 o'clock, only on the Blaze TV. Back in